Okay, now that you've identified nets, let's get to creating them, what we call constructing a net or drawing a net. So this can be difficult just because it takes a lot of visualizing. So if you're not a visual learner, you're just going to have to really pay attention and follow the steps. And the other thing is there are multiple ways to do this. I'm going to show you one because it would take way too long to show you all, but just keep that in mind that there could be other times. So I'm going to give you strategies to use to kind of understand if your way of creating it is the same or not. Or a possible way or not, I should say. Alright, so these are the types of questions you should be asking yourself, and we're only focusing on drawing nets for Prism in this section. You'll do pyramids in the next section. So, how could you create a net for this solid? So we got a rectangular prism here, and we want to ask ourselves, the first question is, how many faces does our rectangular prism have? Well, it has a front and a back, a right and a left, and a top and a bottom. So that's going to be 6. So we know we're going to have 6 pieces total. And when we eventually start doing surface area, that's something you're going to want to keep track of, is how many pieces should you be adding up to get your answer. So now let's figure out, well, what are the dimensions of those pieces? Because we have to get those correct. We can't just draw the boxes willy-nilly because we got to know, well, is that representing one of these actual faces of this shape? So let's focus on the top first. So if I look at this top shape, okay, I can see that we've got this long piece here. That's the same as this long piece down here. So that's an 8. And then this short piece going back like this is 3. So this is an 8 by 3 for the top. So that's the dimensions of the top. And they're telling us centimeters. Doesn't so matter right now because we're not solving it. But we got an 8 by 3 on the top. So then if we're comparing the bottom, just very similar to how we would deal with rectangles, how the across or what we call congruent sides are the same length, it'll be the same idea for the dimensions for the opposite face. So we've got the top is 8 by 3, the bottom's going to have the same thing, right? We have the 8 here and on the other side, and then a short 3 here, so the bottom is also 8 by 3. So that means we're going to have 2 8 by 3 pieces that we're going to need when creating this net. So then I'm going to focus on the right side and the left side, so we're focusing on these pieces, okay? And if I look, I know it's on the right side, but I feel like you can see it better on the left. This measurement is 5, it says, and then going back is 3, so this is a 5 by 3, which is also going to be a 5 by 3 over here. So the right and left side are both, and however you want to say it, 5 by 3 or 3 by 5 doesn't really matter. That's just picking a different order. And then when we look at the front and back, right, when we look at the front piece, we see that there's an 8 down here, and then going up is a 5, right? Because I'm looking at this front piece right here, and that would have to be the same as the back, so those are both going to be 8 by 5s. So again, here are my 6 faces, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. I've got the top and bottom, right and left, front and back. So I'm going to need that many pieces in my net. And if you look, we kind of just matched up each number as we were doing it, right? We had the 8 by 3, so the 8 and 3 went together twice. Then the 3s and the 5s had to go together twice, and then 8 and 5 had to go together. So that is another thing that you can kind of look for as you're doing this. So let's actually create it. So here are the pieces, right? I just have the picture here again. Here are my pieces. I got my 8 by 5, so that would be the front and back. I got my 5 by 3, which are the right and left, and the 8 by 3, which is the top and bottom. So I personally like to, if I can, start with the bottom of a shape, because to me, that's how I visualize it. I visualize if we start at the bottom and you unfold these pieces to create it to be flat, that's what ends up making the net for your 3D shape. So you don't have to start that way. I just like to because that's what makes sense in my head. But regardless, you got to be matching the same sides up with one another. So if I start by my bottom, that's an 8 by 3. I'm going to use one of these pieces right here. Okay, and you can draw this with me. Go ahead and do that. So this would represent the bottom. And if it also helps you to label that that's the bottom, you are more than welcome to do that. That is totally up to you. So now when I picture my bottom, right, let's think about the pieces that would have to connect to that bottom. So the front piece and the back piece are going to have to connect because they're connected with this 8 along here. I'll move this out of the way so you can see. Right, they're connected here with these edge pieces, the 8s. So these are my front and back, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those out, but you need to draw them. Okay, and I'm going to show those being on either side. And again, if it helps you to label your pieces, feel free to do that. That is completely up to you. But this represents the bottom, this is the front, this is the back. So you can kind of see how, like, if the box collapsed open, that's how it's starting to look. So then I have and you could put these in a lot of different ways, okay? So you could either have these next pieces, the right and left side pieces, you could either have them connect at the 3 here and flop open that way. But because my shape is shaped the way it is, I'm going to keep it like this. So these would be like the right and left. Now I could connect those on the sides of one of, like, for example, let's say I connected them on the back, so they're connected back here. I could do that. I could connect them both to the front pieces, right? Like pretending that they're flopping open from these lines. Or I could do one of each. It really doesn't matter. You just need to make sure you're connecting the correct side. Now the way I knew I could connect it this way is because this length is 5 as well as this one. So the 5s could connect up. They're going to create the same thing. If I don't connect up the same sides, then I'm going to create either an overlap in my box or a hole in the box I'm talking about, right? Because they're not going to line up. So you want the same measurement. That's why it's really important that you label each piece. And it's good to figure that out ahead of time what kind of pieces you should be looking at. So I don't care how you put those side pieces, but the right and left, the 5x3s, need to go on either side and connect up with the 5. Or if you wanted to rotate this, it's up to you. If you want to rotate it and connect it at the 3, you can do that too. Now I know my shape isn't perfect, but that's because I created it. And I just can't resize it right now. So I've got those pieces. Now if I look, I've got 1, 2, oops, let me click off that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces so far. I've got my bottom, I've got my back, front, right, left, but I know I need 6 faces, so the piece I'm missing is my other 8x3, which is the top, and you can either connect that down here if you want, or up here. I'm going to do it up here because I have more space. Okay, but I'm connecting it up with my 8x3s. And again, you have to use some visualizing, right? Like if I were to fold this up, I would have my 8x3 on the bottom, my front and back folding up, and then that top 8x3 is going to fold on top, and then the 5x3s are going to fold in on the sides. When we start looking at our nets that we're going to use in our bell ringers, which you may have already seen by now, that'll help you really visualize these better. But if you haven't gotten to that yet, or haven't been able to see those yet, just wait for it and they'll help you build on this knowledge, okay? So let's try a couple more. I won't take this long on each one. I just wanted to give you a good foundation. So let's try a triangular prism. And this is an equilateral triangle. And again, the first thing you want to do is figure out how many faces you need and what dimensions are your faces going to look like. So if I'm doing a triangular prism, I know I'm going to need one triangular piece for the base up front here, but that means there's also one back here. So there's 2 triangle pieces. And because the triangle has 3 sides, I'm going to need 3 rectangular pieces. Now they made this fairly easy on us this time. All sides of the triangle, since it's equilateral, are 3s. And so then when we look at the rectangle, we know it's going to be a 3x6. And it's going to be for all of them because all sides are going to be 3. Okay? So these are the pieces I'm going to need. 2 of the 3x3x3s and the 3 of the 6x3s. So it really doesn't matter what order you put them in. Again, I like to start with the bottom, so I pick a 6x3, and then I actually can match up the 6x3s all together, right? So you can kind of imagine this is the bottom, and then these are the 2 right and left sides, right? Like these collapsing out, and then the front and back of these triangles are kind of like right, I kind of picture it like a tent on this one. So this one's like the front, and then the back, and it folded out. Now you didn't have to do it that way. You could actually move where these triangles are. You have to make sure you have one triangle on one side, one on the other. You can't have one missing, otherwise there'll be a gap in your shape. Okay, let's look at one more. So this is a triangular prism as well. It's a right triangular prism, and so this one's going to be a little bit trickier because you have different measurements here. So again, let's figure out how many faces we need. We've got a triangle on the front, a triangle on the back, and because it's a triangle, there's going to be 3 rectangular pieces on each side connecting up right with the triangle here. So we're going to have 5 faces, just like on the last one. So let's look at our rectangular pieces first. So I'm going to start with the bottom, because again, that's just what makes sense to me. You don't have to start there, but that's what makes sense to me. So if I look at this bottom, right, I've got this 8 here, and then 5. So I know it's going to be an 8x5. So that's represented by this piece here. All right, this 8x5, you can kind of see it match up here. Then I'm going to work on this bigger piece right here, kind of what I consider either the right or front, depending on how you're looking at it. But I see that I've got 5 here, and then this longer piece 10. So I'm going to have a 5x10, or you can call it a 10x5, either way. And then I also have this back piece, right, like the back side or the left side back here. So that one's also going to be a 5 because it has this measurement here, just like it did here. And then it has this 6, right? So it's going to be a 5 by 6. And if it helps you to outline it, you can kind of see it has the dashed lines here. That's could be helpful to you too. Okay, so then I got my triangles. That's a little easier to see because I know they're going to both be the same front and back. And I know I've got a 6 by 8, but I also can measure this longer piece by 10 here, right there, okay? So I could show that as a 8 by 6 as far as the base and height, and then a 10 as the longer piece. But I'm going to have 2 of those, so I'm going to clone this because I want the exact same piece. So those are the 5 pieces I'm going to use to make my net. So I'm just going to start like I did with the very bottom. So I'm going to start with this 8 by 5, so make sure you draw that if you haven't already. Okay, I'm going to start with my 8 by 5. So that's representing the bottom here, the 8 by 5. So now I know that I have to match up the 5 and the 8 to other 5s and 8s. So I'm going to start with the rectangles. And if I look at my 2 rectangle pieces, they have a 5 and a 10 and a 5 and a 6. Well, neither of those are going to match up with the 8, but I will have the 5s matching up. So this would be that like front piece, or if you're thinking of it as the right piece, that's up to you. But I'm going to match that up. Let me move this one out of the way. I'm going to match that up right here. Okay, and so this is representing, oops, one sec. Okay, so here my 5s all kind of in a line, right, because the one across is also going to be a 5. So this is representing that longer 10 piece here. Makes sense, right? So these sides, the 10, the 8, and eventually the 6 are going to create that triangle. So then my last piece here is the back piece, so I'm going to also match it up with the 5, right? So that's representing this back piece, so it's kind of like it folded open long ways. And then I need to match up my triangles. So I'm going to actually start with the back, even though I know the front's easier to see. But when I actually draw it, I need to match up the 8 sides here. And a good way to check yourself is on the left side here, since that's where my 6 is, that's where I also should see a 6 over here, because this side is going to, when it folds up, join with this length here. Let me get this one out of the way. Right, like this 6 is going to join up here, okay, when you fold it up. So then I also have my piece here, but it would not make sense to join it like that. We're going to have a huge gap. It's not going to work properly. So I'm going to flip it around. One sec. There we go. So that the 8s are matching up. So I know it's upside down, but you can still see how the 8s are matching up. And again, I have my 6s here, and then my 10s are going to match up as well. So that's what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be drawn as big as mine, but we got our 5 pieces, and when I look, all the numbers are going to match up, right? So you should be able to look like across them to see if the numbers are going to match up, okay? So you have a quick check to go get. If you need to go back and look at something, go ahead. I know this was a bit of a long video, but it was very, very important to talk through those pieces. So see if you can go apply your knowledge on the quick check. Good luck.